everyone, welcome back. So, in the first discussion, we looked at the supply side of the market, right? Just a quick recall, what did we see? We said that there were three sellers, each of whom were given some amount of a particular good, say pencils, and we were trying to construct the supply curve. And notice how we constructed the supply curve. We asked, if the price is 1 rupee per pencil, how many units does seller 1 want to sell? He wants to sell 1 pencil. Why? Because unsold units are worthless to the sellers. Seller 2 will sell both the 2 pencils and seller 3 will sell 4 pencils. So, combined the total number of pencils that are sold is actually 7 units. We asked, if instead of 1 rupee per unit, if the price was, let us say, 0.5 per pencil, would things have changed? Well, again the answer is no, because by not selling, the seller gets essentially 0. By selling the pencil, she gets whatever the price per unit at which the pencils are sold. So, if I am seller 1, by selling it at 0.5, I earn 0.5. By not selling, I earn 0. So, clearly 0.5 is better than 0, and therefore, seller 1 will want to sell, and the same logic holds for all the sellers. And notice the assumption here is that as far as the sellers are concerned, we have no information, we do not know anything about cost, how much they incurred to produce this particular pencil. For the current example, the sellers were given the pencils, somebody else manufactured them and gave it to the sellers, right. So, just a couple of additional points before we move to the demand side. So, for any price p greater than or equal to 0, the quantity supplied is 7 units, right, no matter what the price is. And even though I have chopped it into steps of 0.2, you can divide it in any way you want, and I am going to treat price as any real number, right. So, a price like, let us say 0.364 is going to be valid in our example, right. So, what we learnt is that the supply curve, the supply curve tells us the quantity supplied, at each and every price, from p equal to 0 to any other number. Which is essentially what you see in this graph as well, right. Notice you have a price from p equal to 0 to potentially infinity, right. So, even if you were to ask me that the price per unit of pencils is, let us say, 500 rupees per unit, what is the total quantity supplied in this particular example, that answer would still have been 7, right. So, the supply curve, which is this vertical line, is capturing the quantity supplied at each and every price from p equal to 0 to p equal to infinity, right. So, sometimes we will simply denote it by the letter S to denote the supply curve, right. Now, the word supply, so sometimes we will use the word supply to mention about the supply curve. Let's follow that convention. The convention is that whenever I use the word supply, I will essentially mean the supply curve, and the supply curve will tell us the quantity supplied at each and every price from p equal to 0 to p equal to infinity. So, to also sort of be very precise about language, notice that on the x axis, I have written the quantity supplied. I did not write supply on the x axis. Quantity supplied is a number that I am representing, right. By quantity supplied, I am essentially telling how many units does seller 1 want to sell at a particular price, how many units does seller 2 want to sell at that particular price, and the same for seller 3. I aggregate all the quantities that the sellers want to sell, and the number that I am going to plot on the x axis is the quantity supplied, right. So, I repeat, supply is not what I am writing on the x axis, I am writing the quantity supplied, okay. Now, let us move to the demand side, let us talk about the buyers or the demand side, okay. So, I am going to just get this picture again here so that we can see it more clearly. So, this is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and so on. We have already plotted the quantity supplied. I have the price here, which is in rupees per unit or rupees per pencil. And what do we know? We know that, and we have divided this into steps of 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1, 1.2 and so on, and my supply curve turned out to be a straight line at q equal to 7. This was my supply curve, right? Okay. Now, we want to talk about the demand side of the market. Okay. So, demand will take us a little bit of work, it is not difficult, but we will do a few iterations to get a sense and get a feel of how to construct the demand curve. Okay. So, the way we will construct the demand curve is, we will construct the demand curve by guessing the price of each pencil and asking what is the total quantity demanded at that price. Right. So, just as we took a price of 1 rupee per unit, 0.5, and then we constructed the supply curve, we are also trying to construct now the demand curve. So, to construct the demand curve, I need to ask at different prices, what are the total quantities that the buyers want to buy. Recall, there is some information which is given about the buyers. This is the information which is given about the buyers, right. I am going to make use of this information and I am going to ask, what is the quantity that buyer 1 wants to buy, what is the quantity that buyer 2 wants to buy, and what is the quantity that buyer 3 wants to buy. Okay. So, let us do that. Okay. So, we will start with a price of 1 rupee per unit. So, in round 1, I am going to start with a price of rupee 1. So, let us say rupee 1 per unit, and let us ask how much does buyer 1 want to buy. Okay. So, what I suggest is, because there is more information given for as far as the buyers are concerned, it will be easy for us if we sort of create a table. So, I will put buyer 1 here. Buyer 1 may choose not to buy. Buyer 1 may choose to buy 1 pencil, he may choose to buy 2, he may choose to buy 3, he may choose to buy 4 and so on, right. And we will similarly put the buyers here, buyer 2 and buyer 3. Okay. So, we will put buyer 1, buyer 2 and buyer 3 here. Okay. Okay. So, unfortunately, I will just write down, I will just draw the picture again. Okay. So, quantity supplied is what we already have. I have price. So, this is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and so on, and this was the supply curve that I had. Notice this is no different than what we had here, right. I am simply reproducing it because the one that I had earlier somehow was not saved. So, let me just chop this off. And so on. Okay. So, we will construct the demand curve by, so let us start with round 1. So, the price that I am going to take is rupee 1 per unit, and for buyer 1 may choose not to buy, may buy 1, may buy 2, may buy 3, may buy 4. Okay. So, let us stick to buyer 1 for the moment. Now if the price is 1, and buyer 1 is given 5 rupees, right. Okay. So, one pencil held in hand is worth rupee 1. Okay. So, that says that if I am buyer 1, to buy 1 unit, I will have to pay rupee 1. Why will I have to pay rupee 1? Because that is the price. It is worth 1 rupee to me. So, the question is, do I want to pay 1 rupee to get something which is worth 1 rupee to me? Once more, the price at which buyer 1 will get the pencil is 1 rupee. Okay, that is decided. Buyer 1 is not deciding, that is somehow decided. Why? Because we have started with the price of 1 rupee per unit. We are also told that that 1 pencil held in hand is worth 1 rupee. Okay. So, does buyer 1 want to pay 1 rupee to get something which is worth 1 rupee? Well, what will be his net gain? His net gain will be 1 minus 1, which is 0. Okay. It would have been nicer if he had a positive net gain, but given that the numbers that I have for buyer 1, for the first pencil, if he pays 1 rupee, he gets 1 pencil, it is worth 1 rupee. So, the net gain for buyer 1 is 1 minus 1, which is 0. If he did not have the pencil, what would have been his net gain? Well, if he did not have anything, he does not pay anything. So, that is 0, he pays 0. He does not get the pencil, so it is worth 0 to him. So, again 0 minus 0 is 0, right. So, as far as buyer 1 is concerned, not having the pencil gives him 0 rupees. So, I am going to write down the net gains here. So, the number that I am writing in blue are the net gains, okay, which is going to be how much the good is worth minus the total price that I pay. Okay, so, let us think of it that way, right. So, it is worth something to me, but to get that good I need to pay something to you. How much do I pay? That is dependent on what the price is, and the worth minus the total amount paid is going to be the net gain. Okay. So, as far as buyer 1 is concerned, not buying anything is giving me a net gain of 0. Now, buying 1 unit is worth 1 rupee, but I need to pay 1 rupee to get that unit. So, worth 1 rupee minus total paid is 1 rupee is also going to give me 0. Okay. Now, 2 are worth 1.5. So, to buy 2 pencils, I need to pay 2 times 1, which is 2 rupees, right. Each pencil costs me 1 rupee for the buyer. So, I paid 2 rupees to get 2 pencils which are worth 1.5. So, the question is, do you want to pay 2 rupees to get something which is worth 1.5 to you, right. So, notice 1.5 is the total worth for both those units. Now, what will be your net gain? Your net gain will be 1.5 minus 2, which is going to be minus 0.5. So, that is going to be negative, right. So, that is going to be negative, correct. Similarly, which is not a good thing, right. So, 3 are worth 1.8. So, to get 3 pencils, you would have paid 3 rupees. They are worth 1.8. So, your net gain is 1.8 minus 3, which is minus 1.2. So, again that is going to be negative. And you will notice that 4 or more also are going to give you a similar answer, right. So, clearly if you are buyer 1, what is your optimal choice? Your optimal choice is either to buy 1 unit or not buy at all. Notice, not buying is a perfectly valid choice. Many times we will go to a store, we will walk out of the store without buying anything, right. So, not buying any particular unit also is a perfectly valid choice, is a perfectly optimal choice for buyer 1. So, as far as buyer 1 is concerned, the optimal choice is either to not buy, or if he wants to buy, he is going to buy exactly 1 pencil. He will not buy 2, he will not buy 3, he will certainly not buy 4 or more. Okay. And the key here is to identify what is the net gain. Okay. So, now let us look at buyer 2. We will repeat the same exercise for buyer 2. Now, if I am not buying anything for buyer 2, the net gain is 0, right, if I am not buying. So, I do not pay anything, I do not have the good, so it is worth 0 to me. 0 minus 0 is going to give me a net gain of 0 rupees. But what about buying 1 unit? The price is still 1 rupee. So, if I am buyer 2, 1 pencil is worth rupee 1, right. So, I pay 1 rupee to get something which is worth 1 rupee. So, my net gain is 1 minus 1, which is 0, right. So, that is going to give me a net gain of 0. Okay. What about buying 2 units? 2 are worth 1.3, right. So, I pay 2 rupees to get 2 pencils which are worth 1.3. So, my net gain is 1.3 minus 2, which is minus 0.7. So, that is negative, right. Similarly, 3 are worth 1.5. So, to buy 3 pencils, you will pay 3 rupees, they are worth 1.5. So, the net gain is 1.5 minus 3, which is minus 1.5, that also is negative. And you will notice that this will also turn out to be negative. So, similar to buyer 1, buyer 2's optimal choice is either to not buy, or if he buys 1, he will buy, or if he buys, he is going to buy exactly 1 unit. Okay. So, let us apply a similar logic to buyer 3. So, what do we know about buyer 3? So, as far as buyer 3 is concerned, buyer 2 we said 0, 0 and these are negative. And buyer 2's optimal choice was to not buy, or if he wants to buy, he will buy exactly 1 unit. And for buyer 3, let us look at what the information says. So, 1 pencil held in hand is worth 0.5. Okay. Notice, it costs buyer 3 1 rupee to get that pencil. So, do you pay 1 rupee to get something which is worth 0.5 to you? Notice, your net gain is going to be 0.5 minus 1, which is a negative number. If you 2 are worth 1 rupee, right. So, to buy 2 pencils, you will need to pay 2 rupees. Each pencil costs you 1 rupee. So, 2 pencils will cost you 2 rupees. They are worth 1 rupee to you. So, your net gain is going to be 1 minus 2, again that is going to be negative. 3 or more are worth 1.5. So, to get 3 pencils, you would have paid 3 rupees. Each pencil costs you 1 rupee. They are worth 1.5. So, your net gain is 1.5 minus 3, which is minus 1.5. Okay, which is minus 1.5. So, as far as buyer 3 is concerned, notice it's not buying is going to give me a net gain of 0, but in all other cases, his net gains are going to be negative. So, for buyer 3, the clear-cut choice is not to buy at all, right. And as I said earlier, not buying is a perfectly valid choice for a particular buyer. Okay. Now, if I aggregate all of this information, notice what is the total quantity purchased by all the 3 buyers combined. Well, for buyer, one option could be buyer 1 does not buy, buyer 2 does not buy and buyer 3 does not buy. So, the total quantity purchased is 0. So, what did we learn? So, we have learned that for buyer 1, buyer 2 and buyer 3, if I combine all of this information, each one of them may choose not to buy. So, 0 plus 0 plus 0 continues to be 0. Okay. So, that continues to be 0, or suppose buyer 1 may choose to buy 1 unit, buyer 2 may choose not to buy, buyer 3 may choose not to buy. So, the total quantity purchased is 1 plus 0 plus 0, which is 1. Buyer 1 may choose to buy to not buy, which is 0. Buyer 2 chooses to buy 1 and buyer 3 chooses not to buy. So, that is 0 plus 1 plus 0, which is 1, which is already taken care here. And the last outcome is that buyer 1 decides to buy 1 unit, buyer 2 decides to buy 1 unit and buyer 3 does not buy. So, the total quantity is 2 units. So, what do we know? So, what do we learn from this example? We learned that if the price is 1 rupee per unit, the 3 buyers combined may choose either not to buy at all. So, at a price of 1 rupee per unit. So, I will use a different color for the demand curve. So, at a price of 1 rupee per unit, the total quantity purchased, i.e. the total quantity demanded, could either be 0, they may choose not to buy, which is a perfectly valid choice, or the total quantity purchased is 1 rupee or is 1 unit rather, sorry, and the total quantity purchased is, let us say, 2. So, either it is 1 or it is 2, right. So, the total quantity that is purchased is either 0 or 1 or 2, and the number that I am going to write here, or the number I am going to denote on the x-axis here, is going to be the quantity, demanded. Okay. So, 0 or 1 or 2 is going to be the quantity demanded, right. So, it is either going to be 0 or 1 or 2. So, we were talking about the demand curve and we use the information at a price of 1 rupee per unit. The quantity demanded by buyer 1 is either 0 or 1. The quantity demanded by buyer 2 is either 0 or 1, and for buyer 3 the quantity demanded is 0, which means the buyer 3 is not interested in buying at all. So, aggregating that information, if we want to ask what is the total quantity demanded, well, the total quantity demanded could be either 0, which is none of the 3 buyers are interested in buying anything, or it could be just 1 unit. We know for sure buyer 3 will not buy at all. Suppose buyer 1 decides to buy 1 unit and buyer 2 decides not to buy, then the total quantity demanded is 1. We get the same outcome if buyer 1 decides not to buy and buyer 2 decides to buy 1 unit. Buyer 3 of course will not buy at all, or the total quantity could have been 2 units at most, because buyer 1 decides to buy 1 unit, buyer 2 decides to buy 1 unit and buyer 3 decides not to buy at all. So, notice combining all of this information and putting it on this graph. Notice I have put quantity demanded in blue. I have at a price of 1 rupee per unit, the quantity demanded is either 0 or 1 or 2. I have connected the line just so that we can see it clearly. So, what is the takeaway? The takeaway is that when the price is 1 rupee per unit, right, the total quantity demanded, so let us make a note of that. When the price is 1 rupee per unit, the total quantity demanded is a number as small as 0, which is basically saying that none of our buyers are interested in buying anything, or could be a maximum of 2 units, which is buyer 1 buys 1 unit, buyer 2 buys 1 unit and buyer 3 decides not to buy at all, right. So, now the total quantity available is 7 units, right. So, recall the quantity supplied is 7 units. The maximum quantity demanded at a price of 1 rupee per unit is 2 units. So, essentially more is available than what people want to buy. Right. So, more is available than what people want to buy, because the quantity available is 7 units. The quantity that buyers want to buy combined is 2 units at most, it could be as low as 0. So, there is a mismatch between the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded. So, more is available than what people want to buy. So, what will be the impact of this? The impact is that the price must fall. So, our price of 1 rupee per unit is too large a price that we started with. Instead of 1 rupee per unit, the price that we ought to take is going to be a much smaller number, right. So, which is why we said, notice when the way we are going to draw the demand curve is, to draw the demand curve, right, to draw the demand curve, we are going to start by guessing the price. Guessing the price and then asking what quantity do the buyers want to buy at that price. Right, and we have done exactly that for a price of 1 rupee per unit. So, in round 1 what we learnt was that we computed what each buyer wants to buy at each price, at that particular price. For buyer 1 we found, for buyer 2 we found, and buyer 3 we found. We aggregated, and the key takeaway was that more is available than what people want to buy, which means that the price must fall. So what will happen is we will move from round 1 to a new round 2, where the price will be a number lower than 1. We will start with a price of, let us say, we will take a price of 0.9 and redo this computation. So we will work out this example, we will take a few iterations till we arrive at the exact price at which both the quantity that is available and the quantity that people want to buy comes closer and ideally matches. Thank you.